watching Your Money Matters here at NDTV Profit. I am Mahima Vachrajani. The topic that we're going to discuss today is divided into two parts. We're going to talk about Flexicap mutual funds. The first guest that we have on the show today is Hari Shyamsundar, who's the VP Senior Institution Portfolio Manager at Franklin Templeton Emerging Markets Equity, joining us now. Hari, hi. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for taking out the time and speaking with us. In terms of your fund, especially the Flexicap fund, I was going through it. Before I get into the intricacies of it, just want to get a sense as to what's the kind of core investment philosophy that you have for this particular fund, and in terms of the growth projections, what is the kind of philosophy that you carry for this fund?
Good evening, Mahima. It's great to be here to speak with you and your viewers. The Franklin India Flexicap, it was earlier called the Franklin India Prima Plus Fund. So it's been around for more than 30 years. It's a story in itself over the last 3 decades. Over the last 31 years, it has been witness to the rise of the India growth story. And it has participated entirely in this through the decades. Over this period of time, investors who were fortunate enough to start the journey at the time when we initiated the fund in 1994 would have seen returns of maybe about 150 times on their investments. What has stayed true in this period of time has been the process. This fund is an institutionalized process in itself. It is backed by research, deep research into each of the stocks which we hold at any point of time. So if you look at the average holding period of the fund or of the stocks in our fund at any point of time, if you take it right now, the portfolio turnover is 20%. And that implies a holding period on average of about 5 years for a stock. So when we're buying a stock, we're doing deep research into it and holding it over a long period of time. So that is what has driven the consistency of the performance over the long period of time.
Okay, and Hari, in terms of your Flexicap mutual fund to be specific, how do you determine, because it's a Flexicap mutual fund, how do you determine the ratio in terms of how the funds will be spread between a large cap, mid cap and small cap?
So we don't look to take dramatic shifts in the positions on the large, mid and small cap. What we are trying to be here is consistent. We are looking to play to the long-term patient investor. So when we are looking to buy stocks and we're looking at our allocations as well, we are looking at stability over the long period of time. And we believe that we should let compounding do its work. So even on the allocation side, we tend to be fairly consistent. So if you look at maybe over the last 7 years or so, our allocations to the large cap have been maybe about in the range of maybe 67 to 81%. That's been the kind of range which we are in right now. And as we stand today, we are at the slightly the higher end of that range. So what we focus on extensively is our ability to pick the right stocks. We look at stock picking as our key driver of return at any point of time. And we are not looking at making dramatic shifts between the large, mid, and the small cap to drive our returns.
And when you say stock picking strategy, what is the kind of approach that you generally have? Is it a top-down approach, a macro-based one, or is it a bottom-up approach where you select individual stocks and then form a portfolio?
Our stock picking approach is bottom-up. There is a bit of a top-down overlay, as tends to happen. You have to have some sort of a top-down overlay on each of your stocks, but it is by and large bottom-up driven. It is very research-driven. The ideas come on a bottom-up basis from the research pool itself, from our research team itself, and that's really what drives the engine for growth in this particular fund. And that is what ensures really that the fund stays stable and the returns are consistent. That's what gives us confidence that when investors are coming to us or when they're looking at investing in equities, they're looking at the long term. If we want to have that certainty, or if we want to have that sureness that over the next 10 years, 15 years, we're going to deliver consistent returns, there has to be a process. And that's what's really baked into the running of the Franklin India Flexicap.
Understood. And what are the top 3 or 4 characteristics that you look at in a business, before doing a doing a deep dive research for a particular stock?
India is a growth story. So, well, growth is one aspect of every stock which we are looking at. At the same time, we want to look at stocks with solid fundamentals, robust balance sheets, a good, strong growth story along with that, and a strong and capable management. It's very important for us to have very good comfort on the management which is running the show with them. Are they, what is the capability? What is the past track record of capital allocation? What are the decisions that they have made in the past? They made mistakes. What have they learned from it? That tends to be what we really look at from companies. As we said, we are looking on average at holding stocks as we stand today at about 5 years. So understanding the underlying fundamentals of the business is one layer, understanding the management on that, the growth outlook, and last but not least, of course, valuations. We want all these at a reasonable valuation. Matching all of this is not an easy task. And that's where we have to really go deep into the names which we hold, and we have to get a strong understanding of the holdings which we have.
Absolutely. Hari, just as important is buying, so is selling, right? Selling at the right time. Just want to understand what are the primary triggers that you generally take into consideration while selling a particular stock. Is it generally based on the price point? I mean, if the decided price target is achieved, you sell off the counter, or maybe valuation point of view, or is there a, I mean, do you consider change in fundamentals of the particular company, or maybe even finding a better opportunity elsewhere? What is the trigger for you when it comes to selling a particular stock?
Well, that's a great question. And selling is, I think, maybe the harder part of the decision. In fact, buying may be a bit easier in one sense. Deciding when to sell can be quite tricky. But what, again, we have to always keep in mind is, why did we buy the stock? If the underlying thesis, the growth thesis, if we know why we have bought the stock and we are assessing it at every point of time, that are the reasons for buying the stock still holding good? If it isn't holding good, then you've got to be very careful to not get into something called thesis drift, which is that you're trying to justify your holding. At any point of time, you're always evaluating what is your thesis for holding the stock. You're looking at it with a fresh pair of eyes, but with an understanding that you bought it for a reason. So that is very important at any point of time, to understand the core thesis of why you're holding it. Now, what can happen, a couple of reasons why you would look to sell. One, your thesis no longer holds good. You had bought the stock assuming that the business is going to play out in a particular way, that management is going to take a certain set of decisions, that a competitive behavior is going to, competitive landscape maybe itself is not looking as good as it was in the past. Some of these could mean that what you had assumed is going to happen for the fundamentals of the stock is not going to play out. At that point of time, take a check. Maybe you want to get out at that point of time. Second point of time is valuations itself. So now you could have a lot more parts of the market, a lot more market participants have come in who have appreciated the story when you've gotten in maybe slightly earlier than them. And now maybe the stock is a bit too overappreciated. It's pricing in a lot more than what you can imagine can happen in this entire in the stock, in the company itself. Now here as well, there will be certain nuances. If there's a strong management at the helm, if there are optionalities which can be there in the stock, you would still want to think about holding on. But if despite all of these, the stock is looking extremely expensive, then yes, it's time to pull the trigger and move out of the stock. So these are a couple of reasons really why you would want to sell a particular stock which you have.
And Hari, considering the current market situation, how are you taking that into consideration? One thing, and because there are a lot of macro uncertainties that are going on. There's still a tariff overhang which is there on the Indian equity markets, and we're seeing that kind of overhang that's remained on the benchmarks as well as the broader markets as well. When it comes to all of these things, two-part questions to you. How is your sectoral approach right now? What are the sectors that you're exploring? And secondly, how much of a dry powder cash are you sitting on?
I'll answer the second question first. We don't tend to take massive cash calls. We look to be fully invested at any point of time or close to fully invested. So maybe about 0 to 5% kind of a cash is what we would tend to have on average in our fund. So we are looking at any point of time at the best opportunities which are offered by the Indian stock markets. We think that participating in the India story is a story, it's still a story of compounding, and being invested in the best ideas at any point of time is the best way to generate long-term returns. So how are we looking at it? What we looking at in terms of positioning for the FlexiCap and the Franklin India funds in a broader way? We really think that the consumption theme is something which has got legs. It's something which you can see the top down from the top down. If you look at the macro overlay itself, you can see the fiscal stimulus, the monetary stimuli are in place to drive consumption going forward. Rural has already been on a good footing. It's been doing reasonably well. And the volume numbers for some of the FMCG companies in the most recent earnings quarter were also pretty strong. So we are in a pretty good position for consumption, which has shown signs of pickup, to continue along that and maybe show even stronger signs towards the second half of the financial year. In addition, we also see drivers for a longer term theme on consumption itself. There's a premiumization angle, there is new business models which are evolving and coming up to the surface. And these are parts of the stock market which we are looking at in a lot greater detail and looking to have a greater exposure on in our funds, and including the Franklin India FlexiCap. We see that in the longer term, there will be a capex play. I mean, the India capex story, India has to go through a long-term investment and a capex story. Having said that, as we have discussed, we are bottom-up stock pickers. We don't think the valuations are as good across the board. There are some pockets of overvaluation in that part of the market.
Right.
And to that extent, we are looking to stay a bit more underweight on some of that side of the market.
Understood. Okay, Hari, thank you so much for giving us those insights, and learned quite a lot about FlexiCap as well as Franklin. Thank you so much for taking out the time and speaking with us at NDTV Profit.